Devon, good afternoon. I'm on the steps of the National Assembly here on Stall Plain in Parliament, and of course opposition parties, political parties, the ruling party, everybody's coming piling out of the National Assembly now following the Minister's speech. With me, first up, I have Steve Swart of the ACDP. Mr. Swart, it was Minister Gigaba's first budget vote speech, a mini budget vote speech. What impression did he make on you, and how tough was his task today?
Well, we all know he had very little room to move, given the very low economic growth ratio that we are faced with, less than 0.7%. This has resulted in 50 billion rand less tax collected than projected. And so there's massive pressure on government debt levels, which have increased significantly. This is a concern for us from the ACDP side, because we know government debt service levels are increasing, and that to service those debts will crowd out other priorities. However, on the positive side, we see a very strong commitment to address the challenges of our state-owned enterprises with new boards for SAA and of course Eskom, which is really needed. Eskom presents the most significant challenge to our finances and our economy in the country, and their governance must be addressed.
Steve, thank you so much for your time. I see Pieter Groenewald of the Freedom from Plus. Let me just hear from him also. Meneer, hoe gaan het met jou?
Goed en self.
Goed, dankie. It wasn't an easy task for the minister to deliver his first budget speech today here in Parliament. What does the FF Plus think about what it heard today?
Wel, daar is nie twyfel nie dat dit baie teleurstellend was. Die minister sê eintlik ook niks nuuts nie. Hy identifiseer wel die groot probleem, naamlik dat ons nie ekonomiese groei het nie. Maar hy doen niks daaromtrent om voorstelle te kom om beleggingsvertroue in Suid-Afrika te vestig nie. As ons gaan kyk na die geheel van sy toespraak, dan sê hy byvoorbeeld ook dat ons sit met 'n probleem met ons staatsskuld. Net die koste om die staatsskuld te onderhou is tans 163 miljard rand. Die voorspelling is dat teen 2022 gaan dit ongeveer 233 miljard rand wees. Met ander woorde, ons betaal ons dood aan skuld. Daar is by my nie twyfel dat ons volgende jaar in Februarie aansienlike verhogings in belasting gaan sien nie, veral wat persoonlike belasting betref. So die mense moet hulle maar gereed maak daarvoor. Hy het ook niks vreeslike aankondigings gemaak hoe om staatsbesteding in te kort nie. En ons sien die rand het reeds 1,4% gedaal, en die kanse is goed dat Suid-Afrika teen die einde van die jaar 'n afgradering gaan kry by die graderingsagentskappe.
Baie dankie vir jou tyd, meneer. I see my colleague Bulelani across the plain. He's standing by with a UDM member. We'll now cross to Bulelani.
Well, thank you very much, Ibra. Certainly, Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba had a very difficult juggling act to do. Obviously, the growth levels for this year now forecast to just go down to 0.7%. And to speak to us more, here is going to be the UDM Chief Whip, Mr. Gigaba. Basically, the economic outlook does look a little bit gloomy. Of course, again, the announcement on the shortfalls in the revenue, as well as the increasing budget deficit. Your thoughts on this midterm budget?
Well, I think to say gloomy is an understatement. We are in deep trouble because of the poor management of our finances by the ruling party. I heard the minister, for instance, talking about bold measures to fight corruption, fight wasteful expenditure, but we all know that insofar as that matter is concerned, they have a credibility of I would equate it to a cat that decides to conduct a commission of an inquiry into the disappearance of mice. They have no credibility insofar as that is concerned. But the other very important issue here is that I expected the minister, as a party, we expected the minister to make some bold announcement around state SOE reforms. I didn't hear much about that. Instead, what he did was to make promises which were very vague, to say National Treasury will, at some point, this is what we're going to consider. Because we have a country where, for example, by 2021, our government debt will stand at about 3.4 trillion rands. Add to that, for example, the current budget deficit of about 4.7%. It's tragic what they've done to the finances of the country, and the Minister of Finance today did not provide us any viable alternative as to how to get us out of this problem. It was more a speech about political posturing probably for the December conference than one that focused on the nuts and bolts of how to turn around the South African economy. But we must credit him though with how he has handled the SAA matter so far, and some of the bold steps he's taking around ESCOM to try and turn it around. But as we do so, we must also remember that he is responsible for the mess that those SOEs find themselves in, because he was once a Minister of Public Enterprises. So we are saying he didn't do much for us. It was a flat speech. We are hoping that in future we'll find a way to redeem himself, or at the very least, he will make good on some of the promises that he made today.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ngabayomzi Kwangwa, who is the UDM Chief Whip. I'm going to cross again back to my colleague, Abra Babian, who's just on this side of the precinct.
Thanks, Bulelani. I now am going to be speaking with David Mania of the DA, who's going to be giving me his insights about what he heard today. David, we were expecting students to come to Parliament today. They didn't pitch. I first of all want to ask you, was enough said about what was going to be happening with our students and the concerns that they've been expressing over the last while?
Well, mention was made of post-school education, but because the Commission of Inquiry into Higher Education and Training report hasn't been revealed by the President, I think National Treasury are waiting to consider the fiscal implications and will probably make firm announcements during the main budget in 2018.
And it wasn't in his written speech, but apparently the Minister did make reference to the nuclear program. Can you just brief us on that? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, the nuclear build program could cost 1.2 trillion rand over the next 20 or 30 years. It's one of the biggest fiscal risks, and the minister did make a statement in the House that we would procure nuclear, which I think is terrifying, frankly, but that it would be done at a scale and cost that could be afforded. But if you look at the budget today, it's hard to see how we could possibly afford nuclear when what we have is a full-scale blowout of the budget over the medium term, with the budget deficit blowing out by 54 billion rand to over 200 billion rand, national debt and debt service costs skyrocketing. What most people don't realize is that in 3 years' time, we will be spending 223.4 billion rand servicing our debt, which is 120 billion rand more than we're spending this year on police, and 45 billion rand more than we're spending on social grants this year. So we have really today seen the full-scale horror of President Jacob Zuma's mismanagement of the economy in South Africa.
David, thank you so much. David Mania using the word horror to somewhat describe what he heard today. I believe Bulelani is ready with another guest. Bulelani, it's over to you.
Well, thank you so much, April. The political reaction here on the steps of Parliament are continuing. I'm going to speak to the Chief Whip of the National Freedom Party, Professor Nhlanhla Kubisa. Obviously, a lot has been said in the midterm budget by the Minister. Just take us through your impressions on the intervention with regards to the state-owned companies.
Well, there's not so much that the Minister said about the SOEs. Really, things are so bleak in those enterprises. For instance, billions of rands have been wasted. We've been bailed out for non-performance, and of course, with no consequence management, and there is slow economic growth. And this was just a bouquet of proposals and a wish list, just a wish list, and nothing tangible was given by the Minister. The economy has shrunk, and the unemployment is 27%. Our economy will not grow to more than 0.7% in 2017. This is just a plethora of issues issues that the minister was supposed to speak to in a more substantive way. You know, he never said anything about higher education. All these issues should have been brought to the fore. He said something about a township economy, but no tangibles again. These are all worries for us, for our people who are hungry now, who don't have employment now, and basically there isn't much new that was said with regard to the speech as such. But the NFP will watch the government to see that these SOEs perform and there is some consequence management. We deal with corruption, we deal with state capture, because these are the things that are grinding into the marrow of the economy of the country.
Right, Professor Nhlanhla Khubisa, thanks once again for your time.
Thank you very much.
I want to take on that note, just bring in the leader of the PAC, Mr. Luthando Mbinda. He was also going to give us his impression on this mini budget by the finance minister. Mr. Mbinda, anything that struck you in this mini budget?
To be honest with you, not at all. Yeah, he was just all over the show, and what I see today was just a routine presentation as it was done by Upravin Gordhan. Even if you look at everything that he's saying is not pro-poor, even the fiscal policy review that he is talking about is not even addressing the interest of the African people. And look, even when I was listening to the state of the improvements that he was talking about in the state-owned entities, I mean, I think they must just learn from China, because in China, public sector, their economy is driven by the public sector. But in our situation, I must say it was just a total chaos. He should just focus. I thought they will only focus on health and safety, education, because those are the areas that are affecting our people. More especially when the issue of the land it has also not been addressed, as we know that they have been very, very slow, more especially in transferring land to the indigenous African people. Yes.
All right, Mr. Mbinda, thank you very much once again for your time, and that's the PAC leader here in Parliament. Again, crossing for more reactions on the other side, Abra Babia is standing by.
Now, while this was Minister Gigaba's first budget speech, which he delivered to Parliament today, somebody who sat through many budget speeches over the past few years is the IFP's Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Prince, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Thanks. Sir, it's been described as a really difficult climate that the country finds itself in. It's also been described as probably the most anticipated budget speech ever. What did you think of the minister and what he had to say to the nation today?
Absolutely, as you say, in the context of the technical recession in which the country is, I didn't expect anything better. But in fact, I don't think I can say it is worse than I expected, for instance, precisely because I'm a realist. You know, I think that in the circumstances where even the whole world is in a recession, one must be realist. But at the same time, I think that with all due respect and all the good things that the minister said, he kept on, saying that we need, confidence. I think this is the biggest challenge for all of us as South Africans, because that depends on us, It has nothing with the recession or anything. The fact that our country is in a crisis, it gives one hope, at any rate, that we address the issue of the state-owned enterprises and the fact that they actually aim at getting an equity partner. Because I was in the cabinet, as you know myself, for 10 years, and I know that this is a challenge for cabinet every year. And it has been a source of a lot of corruption too. So it gives one hope, therefore, to know that they're trying to address this.
On that topic of corruption, South Africans are worried about what's happening to their tax. In that regard, do you think South Africans can go to bed feeling a little bit more confident tonight? Because I know very early on in his speech, the minister did say it's a difficult road right now that we are walking.
I think that one must be truthful and honest and say that I don't think so. I think that corruption has really destroyed our country, has destroyed everything in our country. And in spite of all the good things that were said, and that, each time, it was like a refrain. Each time the minister talked about corruption, there were boos in the house, precisely showing that the people actually the people didn't believe him. Although it's a good thing to say, but that there was no credence.